Hello everyone and welcome back to Pyanodons Mods. This is Otaku Showboat and today we will be discussing quartz processing. If you've been enjoying our tutorials thus far, please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you are so inclined, I do stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/Otaku Showboat. So you can head on over there to leave a follow to be notified when I go live. Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to approximately 1 p.m. US Eastern Time. You can do all of the social stuff through the links below the video, including supporting Pyanodons Mods development at patreon.com/Pyanodon and myself at patreon.com/OtakuShowboat. There's also a link to my Discord server down in the description where you can find the string to share the production lines for glass as well as the other processes that I have discussed thus far in these updated videos. So, glass. Glass is different than a lot of other ore processing processes. It's also been relatively significantly updated due to the addition of the Glassworks building. The Glassworks building looks a little like this. It is brand new, like if we're comparing the previous video to this video, thus why this video is called an update video. I do have a previous overview going over the entirety of this chain if you want to go and see what this processing chain looks like, an example of what this looks like as it's built out all the way up to the top tier of processing. You can go back and refer to that video. The only thing that has changed is that there's this additional step where you now have to make a molten glass in a Glassworks and then cast that molten glass. This is a relatively recent change. Not only has the Glassworks building been added, but there's now molten glass that you have to deal with. So, at the beginning of the game, at pre-Red Science, you will have to cast your quartz ore into glass. So you will need glass. You will also need glassware to make your initial red science. This is going to be done in Glassworks buildings. So at minimum, you will need 3 Glassworks buildings to produce your initial red science. You, of course, will not be doing the hot air processes. Note that this input ports are going to be changed, most likely to be in line with the other buildings. This is just a little bit of a bug for now. You'll have the molten being produced through regular processing and then processed into other things. As I said, there's non-hot air versions of all of these things. The hot air versions, by the way, add 25% to the output across the board on anything that you use the hot air. Glassworks buildings are unique in that they have this little fluid port right down here that is unmarked. This is because these buildings use fluid fuel. There is a wiki, if you're not in the editor, that you can access, little Pyanodon icon up in the top left corner, that will give you a list of all of the fuels that have fuel value and what those fuel values are. Pre-Red Science, your only options are going to be tar or coal gas, as produced from the DDC processes, converting your raw coal into coke, for the coke that you need for your red science, as well as the coal. So that's what you're going to be using here. I would caution against using too much of your coal gas because you will need aluminium as well to get into your red science. You will need to mine some aluminium, and that requires coal gas to mine in and of itself. Now, as for the timing of when you have to set up your glass, it has to come after tin because you need tin to make the soil extractors, to make the quartz mines, to actually mine quartz. This is different if you are playing Pi Block where you don't mine. So things change a little bit where you're actually converting sand into quartz. But either way, you need to get into red science, and you need to have rubber stoppers as well as empty petri dishes. So actually, you need a minimum of four glassworks to make the things that you need for your red science, because you do need these empty petri dishes so that you can make petri dishes, so that you can make incubated petri dishes, so that you can make basic substrate, and then added to glassware, and that's your red science. That is your red science. Now, once you are at red science, uh, Syngas becomes a lot more freely available to you, so you can actually, or even available to you in the first place, so you can actually start using Syngas at the red science phase. This is the one that you'll want to really use, because you can do some dedicated setups that make Syngas for you once you have your red science. But before you have your red science, it's just going to be really low output. There's no way that you're going to be processing 15 quartz ore until you get to the point where you can even make the syngas, because you're going to be very limited on your fluid fuel. Now, at red science, you can pick up your first quartz processing tech. That's going to give you access to a crushed quartz process as well as a powdered quartz process by adding pure sand. Now, if you're tempted not to use pure sand, I would highly suggest against that, because there is a pretty big difference in the amount of molten glass output between these two for the same quartz ore in, and pure sand is merely buildings with water. That's all it is. It's just soil into sand into pure sand, and dealing with the tailings that are output from those processes. So that's what you need to do. You need to deal with the stone and the gravel here from this as well. So ideally, you would have titanium for burners by now, as well as some steel for uh, the doohickeys. Yes, the doohickeys, the pitfalls, whatever they're actually called. I call them pitfalls. They are the pie thingies. These sinkholes. Yes, that's the word. Sinkholes. That is the word. So this gets available to you at red science. There is no green science quartz processing upgrade. So you're going to be doing this process for a very, very long time. Now, note that this molten glass will need to get shared not just by glass, but also glassware, and empty petri dishes, and optical sets, if you're trying to get into green science. And then once you're at green science, you'll also need it for the glass cores. The glass cores, which is going to be part of your optical sets for your everything. For your everything. Optical fibers used for circuit 2s, as well as neuroprocessors and blue science and a whole bunch of other stuff for electronics type things. So you're going to need quite a few glass cores. And of course, there is a hot air recipe. And by that point in the game, you are definitely going to be doing hot air processing versions of all of these recipes. Do it as soon as you can, basically. Quartz tubes are semi-optional. They would come far later in the green science phase of the game because of those rare earth oxides. These improve your output of hydrogen chloride or hydrochloric acid. The only difference is what state it's in, is whether it's liquid or gas between those two names. But it is officially hydrogen chloride as named in the game. So there we go. That makes it the gas, by the way, if it's hydrogen chloride. If it's in an aqueous water solution liquid, then it's hydrochloric acid. So the quartz tubes, again, mostly optional. You need them for a few things. If you're doing bio oil processing, you will need quartz tubes, and if you're doing, which is a new process, by the way, that will have its own tutorial video later on, and if you're doing the upgraded HCl, which will actually loop the quartz tubes, then you'll also do this, but you do need that rare earth oxides first. And then the glass fibers also come into play a little bit later on as well. So you will need lots of stuff, and then there are other things that aren't here that aren't listed out here because they don't use the molten, but the phosphate glass doesn't use molten; it uses crushed quartz, and then the fiberglass will use glass fibers. There you go. The glass fibers are used to make the fiberglass. That's more into play on circuit 3s, not circuit 2s. So a little bit later in the game for that. Also note the refined syngas inputs on some of these. Now, at blue science, so that's the green science. You're gonna need it for like a whole bunch of stuff at green, but you don't actually get an upgrade and you're stuck using a red science tech of processing for your molten. You're probably starting to understand that you need a lot of molten glass to get stuff done in the Pi suite at this point. So you're going to need significantly more than 15 core in. Just going to throw that out there if you want to do anything at any degree of scale. At blue science, you get access to this process. This process takes our powdered quartz in a hydrocyclone to make a pulp 1 that then gets scrubbed by adding sand to make a pulp 2, as well as a little bit of iron oxide that you have to deal with. That then is thrown into a centrifuge with some slaked lime to make a prepared quartz, and then it's centrifuged again with creosote into a purified quartz that you can then melt down in a Glassworks down to molten, and then cast it into whatever you want to cast it into. This will double your molten glass output for the same input. It is a doubling of your molten glass through this process. It's also using far fewer glassworks, so it's much faster, which helps a lot. Helps a lot. And I would say that at this blue science phase of the game, that's where you're going to start getting modules. So make sure that you use efficiency modules or effectivity modules in your Glassworks buildings to reduce their power requirements. Why? Because that directly affects how much fluid fuel is consumed in these. If you can get these down to negative 80%, or even just negative any percent, it will help you dramatically on how much fluid gets consumed through the fuel ports there. It may actually allow you to use different higher fuel value but harder to get fuels for these glassworks. Of course, as you upgrade the glassworks, they start using more and more fuel as well, with increasing mark level, but they also are faster to compensate for that, so keep all of this in mind as you go along. Now, you're stuck with this all the way up to utility science. So make sure that you do this. Also note that you do need to add sodium carbonate here as well as the pure sand. So do note that sodium carbonate requirement. That is a very important thing to note. You will have it by this point, so you will know how to make it at this point. There's only really one-ish way to make it. I mean, it's out of sodium sulfate, however you make your sodium sulfate with coke and limestone. Now, utility science will unlock a process of high-grade quartz pulp, which is going to use some sulfuric acid on your purified quartz that you can then cast with sand castings and fuel rods, which are added into this step. Or you can do one extra step. You can do one extra step by adding syngas to your high-grade quartz pulp to make high-grade quartz, and then add the fuel rod and not the sand castings. Then add a fuel rod and get significantly more molten than this. So you go from 150 all the way to 390. You more than double the previous tech level of molten output for quartz. So, of all of the utility science stuff that you get access to, this is definitely going to be one that will really help if you are scaling your base. Now, again, same caveats apply. Are you really going to be able to take the time to do this in a playthrough if your only goal is to just make a non-zero amount of space science through quantum computing? Probably not, but I'd say of all of the utility science unlocked for processing processes, this is the most likely one that you would want to do, because you do need a significant amount of the molten glass for the various things that use glass. Just due to the volume of glass that you need, you're probably going to want to do this, even if it is not much more time to go until you get your space science, your first space science. Uh, but even with Pi Alien Life added into the Pi suite, there's still not that much time between utility and space science in the grand scheme of things. If you have taken the time at previous tech levels to scale in preparation for that space science. So there you have it. That is all of the processes. That is everything. We note. Well, I'll just note I did because I didn't say it. You will float your purified quartz with sulfuric acid into the high-grade quartz pulp, and then evaporate that pulp into the high-grade quartz with some syngas added in for good measure. So there we go. That's the production line. You can find this production line on my Discord server. The link is below the video. Again, if you have been enjoying this series thus far, please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you are so inclined, I do stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/Otaku Showboat. You can do all of the social stuff through the links below the video, including supporting Pyanodon's mods development at patreon.com/Pyanodon and myself at patreon.com/Otaku Showboat. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all on the next one.